can you kind of give me your, how'd you get into politics? I believe it was right at the end of 2015 to where you're at now. Kind of in your own words, take me through your political journey.
Well, it started really back as a county councilman. Why I got involved in running for public office back in the early 90s was because of an unresponsive city administration here in Bloomington that didn't listen to the concerns about something as simple as a small stop sign in our community. And so we worked on getting that stop sign replaced because we had a lot of accidents. And back then I was a fire department employee, ran and drove fire trucks and also ran on rescue situations with wrecks. And so I knew that safety was a big focus of our community, and that's one of the things that got me involved in politics, was just as little as a little stop sign.
Why? Now I guess jump into the State House. We'll start off. Why did you decide to run for House District 45?
Well, when I first ran for state representative back in 2015 in a caucus, then got elected for 3 terms, 16, 18, and 20, my main focus was to take regulations and laws that were changed 30 plus years ago that had a negative impact upon our local farming communities, small business owners, and the way property taxes were restructured for tax caps, etc. And I knew that on a local level, no matter what I did to make a change in public policy locally, when that administration changed, as it did, those changes got undone at the stroke of a pen. So what my focus was to make sure that I can make positive changes for Indiana and my district that are longer lasting, that are harder to unwind, from freeing up farmers to make sure they can farm their properties without intervention, making sure that businesses have some controls on environmental regulation and safety regulations, but not the overburdensome that we've seen before and we continue to see today. So that's my main focus, is to make sure we have a good economy, which in the end, it makes a better revenue flow for schools and parks and infrastructure such as roads and bridges, and that's where I've also focused. And that's my incentive, just to make sure that when I pass away, that next generation, my kids and yours in the future, have good public policy that will let them move forward and not be a burden on their shoulders, as we know government is, especially right now coming from the Biden administration.
So how do you respond to people who say that you're jumping from House District 62 to a safer Republican district in House District 45?
So that's the issue. It goes back to my opponent, who cannot run on his record. He has to hire private investigators to follow me and my wife where I might or might not live. But the fact is that the district I'm in running for now, 45, is almost 60% of my current district. I live in my current district. I did not move out of my district. I'm here to fight for my citizens that put trust in me to do the right thing, to make the right policies, and to be there to answer the phone 7 days a week, which I do. People call me, I come visit the schools, I go to manufacturers. I try to make that connect between what we have a lack of as far as workers and what we could train our kids in school to be prepared for. Some want to go to college, some may not. I'm in the community, and that's the difference. I go to the universities and talk with the presidents. I go to the farm bureaus and support the kids by purchasing their animals, because that's important to them. I go to the nonprofits and make sure I volunteer and give my time and money. I just don't do this during an election year. I do it on election, off election, and I'm not going to leave my district, the majority of my district, to someone who is absent, who doesn't come. That's the bottom line.
I think in our previous conversations you had said that you bought the old mill back there in 2018.
Yes.
You said you've been working on it. Do you have any end date as to when that might, when it all might be finished and you're done working on it?
Yeah, so we live in about a 2,000 square foot section of it on the second floor, And we have 5,500 square foot on that floor we're turning into an event center where nonprofits can come free of charge to do their fundraisers or their events. Even the school has interest, which is right across the street, to come over to use that for some classes or some sort of activity for their programs for their grade school and high school kids. It's going to be an event center on that part, and it's going to open up probably, we're hoping, by the end of summer. Now downstairs in the basement, I've got a 7,500 square foot that I put about 6 of my antique cars in, and that's my passion, is to have ample room for my cars. And I've still got more. I got a lot of cars, there's no doubt. Now they're rolling chassis that need a lot of work. I haven't bought a new vehicle since 2008, and I don't plan on it. So I like to redo and save things, just like we love saving buildings and structures. And this is going to be an investment, not profit motivated, but community motivated, to make sure we can have some opportunities for the middle of my district, for job opportunities, move some engineers or some manufacturers that deal with crane infrastructure. You know, we have a big boom there. It's the largest employer in Southwest Indiana, and that's where my main focus is, to make sure we can grow that footprint and extend that into other parts, into Vigo, Knox, Sullivan, and Davies County.
Okay, so it sounds like, and I wasn't familiar with that, that's got to be exciting to some of the people there. So you'll probably move into, you know, a different location once that's all finished refurbishing, I'd assume?
No, that.
Or you'll live there,
no,
and it'll be a event
my
center?
wife said once we're here, we are not moving. She loves the view. The kitchen overlooks the river valley there and the cornfields, and it's just a magnificent view with a building that's was built in 1922. And it has some community history. We've got a graveyard in the back that has the founder of Bloomfield, Van Slikes, that donated all the land for Bloomfield to become a town many years ago. And we're going to make like a little history room out of one portion. So we've been seeking for several years artifacts and items that were manufactured there, such as wool blankets, rugs. You know, that was the process they performed there during World War II. And it's just a neat, unique building, and we believe in developing and not letting things sit to rot.
Okay, well, we got to go to a different topic, because I'm a huge history guy. I could talk about that all day with you. That sounds exciting. I guess just kind of getting more into the politics here, we'll get into your positions, but redistricting has gotten you and Bruce into this situation. Would you be in favor of an independent redistricting commission?
I think every 2 years, every 4 years, the voters vote for the representative or the senator that best believes in their values. And as long as the maps are done fairly, like they have been done, I didn't have any input. Most legislators didn't have any input this time, whereas before they had quite a bit. So at this point, if you can figure out how to do it, you know, if you have a board that's 2-2, somebody's got to break the tie, and generally those that are appointed to that commission, there's always been politics involved in any board appointment, and until you can show me how you can do that, to take the one side or the other out of the equation. So I would look at it as I've done in the past.
What makes you the right candidate for House District 45?
The difference for me is that I've worked on some major legislation and got 3 major bills passed. One deals with fire districts. The Fire Association took this bill across the nation. It's model legislation. It protects fire districts from being annexed, from stealing their revenue. I compare it to a school district trying to bully up for a smaller school district and take their revenue. So this protects fire districts. We have a problem with volunteer firefighters throughout Indiana where there's a lack of them. And we're trying to figure out how to incentivize more volunteer firefighters. My first bill was a fentanyl bill that dealt with drugs that are manufactured in China and come across our borders. Each year the legislature would have to go up and rewrite a bill because the compounds that our bill addressed, China drug labs would change it, some different formula. So we would have to figure out a way, and we did, to make sure that these types of compounds, these mixtures, no matter what the percentage is, are illegal in the state of Indiana. and that legislation went across the nation. So one of my pieces of legislation I passed in 2019 was to incentivize higher penalties, and I doubled the penalties for illegal robocall bills to owners of phone lines that were on the do not call list. And 4 weeks ago, the Attorney General, Todd Rokita, went and got a business in Evansville that made 790,000 calls to Indiana residents that were on the do not call list. And he used part of my bill to go after that and to have an agreement with a fee they would pay, and they would stop doing that. Those were pretty hard bills. People agree with them. We still got problems to work out. But on those 3 bills, I pass other pieces of legislation, but what I do is I go out to my communities. I answer my phone. School board calls me, the teachers call me, I go to their schools. A manufacturer calls me, I go to their business. A county councilman or county commissioner calls me, and I listen to where laws need to be tweaked. I've actually helped Sullivan County a few years ago when they had a tax issue. They went to their representative, my opponent, and he said, no, I'm not going to give you any help in that issue. Senator Bassler reached out to me and said, I need some support in the House for this amendment. Will you do this? And I did. So I've already helped one of the new areas of my district, before I was even the representative. And I think that's the difference, is I answer my calls, I listen, and I move forward with legislation using their words.
So what is the biggest issue facing District 45 right now?
It's several factors. We've got drugs, right? I voted against a bill early on that would have let almost 1,100 felons out of prison instantly with no input from the prosecutor or any of the victims. It would have left it up to the state. I didn't think that was right, and that's why I voted no. So that's the key thing, is make sure we keep criminals, those that have already plea bargained, in jail, in prison, to do their times. Let them be rehabilitated there. Let them be able to change before they come out. Don't release them early. I think roads and bridges has been a factor. In 2017, we passed a restructuring of the fuel fees, which now you're receiving community crossing grants throughout Indiana. And we was able to have some input for those lost flyover counties, right? Flyover towns that wasn't in the revenue flow before as much as they should have been. And so we put some population parameters on there. So if you're below a certain population, you now can qualify and compete with the road dollars just like big cities and towns. And I think that's key to having good job opportunities, having good roads, which really leads to more revenue for the schools, our parks, and all the programs that we need help with.
So in our previous discussions, you've talked about the importance of your experience dealing with Crane over there. Can you point to maybe something you've done in the legislature that has been particularly beneficial to Crane and kind of that important community that you got right there?
Yes, so I've been trying to get a bill passed. They have some set aside funding from revenue, from state taxes, et cetera, in a given footprint. And they were allowed to have up to $5 million per tech park in a revenue flow. And they have 3 partners in that tech park, Greene, Martin, and Davies. And they capped out at their $15 million a few years ago, and they needed help to reauthorize that legislation. So I went to bat for them to try to reauthorize that. Did not get everything we wanted, but we were able to get an additional $100,000, which is $300,000 per tech park, and that is extended with no time frame. So that just doesn't stop. Now I'm still working on, and I will continue to work if I'm represented or elected to be your representative in the State House, to try to get that tax incentive back up to where I believe it should be. Purdue has a cooperative agreement, Indiana University has a cooperative agreement with Westgate Tech Park down there. Most people don't realize that tech park is different than any other tech park. It was produced because the feds told us that in order for a military installation to be saved from BRAC, base realignment, that they had to have 2 things, an interstate and a tech park. And the three counties came together and put literally 50 plus, maybe close to $100 million over these last 10 years to make that tech park viable and sustainable. And it's very important, as you know, during the times we have right now. Westgate and Crane Naval Weapons is one of, I think, most important facilities in this nation. And it's the largest employer in Southwest Indiana. And I'll continue to make sure that other legislators across the state, day and night, they hear from me that we need this funding to support, because it's a good economic developer. It's a good tool to use for workforce development to keep people from going to the unemployment lines. It's a good tool to cross-train and retrain our workers who have lost jobs in the coal fields from the Biden and the anti-fossil fuel administration. And I'm here to make sure that we are treated fairly.
Can you give me an example of a time that you've maybe reached across the aisle and worked on an issue that was particularly important to your Democratic counterparts?
Well, I think one of them is the 2017 road funding bill we did, a 20-year plan. We had to have some Democrats and Republicans both alike that really wanted to see infrastructure investment because our roads were, you know, the crossroads of America. We get used our roads more than probably any other state, going back and forth from east to west coast, north to south. So we have a lot of, we have a lot of wear and tear. So we reached over the aisle for that. Also reached over the aisle, you know, for the fire district bill, the fentanyl bill, the robocall bill, and many others. One bill I did was a forestry production bill that protected farmers, you know, so they can go out and do forestry best management practices on their farm. And I reached over the aisle, and the past Speaker of the House, Democrat Pat Bauer, came on as a co-author on one of my bills, and we worked together for that. Now, it didn't make it into the Senate, but we made it out of the House. And we hope to still, that's a big issue right now nationwide, is make sure we have good forestry management practices to cut down on wildfires.
Do you, kind of in the same vein, I mean, do you think it could be a little more difficult for you to get things done here if you were to be elected representative because you've challenged a sitting representative? Do you think that that could make it more difficult for you to get stuff done in the future within your caucus?
No, I've got the best conservative Republican vote in the Indiana House by CPAC. I scored a 93. My opponent scored 77, and he also has a 67 on ActiVote, which is a website you can go to. But no, I've been very effective. I have a lot of friends. I have no enemies. I don't make any enemies out of anybody. I always try to talk positive about someone and not to burn any bridges.
So you've been over in Bloomfield for a while, but you had spent quite a bit here in Monroe County. Can I get your thoughts on annexation, what we've seen with the city of Bloomington? What are your thoughts on annexation?
Well, I always like to have property owners and citizens, especially voters, to have a voice in whatever process, whether it's annexation, whether it's manufacturing, location, whether it's schools. The more voice your citizens have, the better the situation is. And that's all about annexation, make sure your voice is heard. You know, it's been skewed in favor of cities and towns for 30 plus years. So that's just one of those little loopholes that I think needs to be changed to give people more of a voice. If you want to annex someone, sell your city, sell your town. You know, do a good job. And, you know, there's cities and towns that, you know, need to expand, and that neighbors want to be in a city or town because they have good policies, they have good services. And it's up to you to sell that. It's up to me to sell you that I'm the best representative, which I believe my citizens who I represent think that. I hear that a lot. So sell your plan.
So going back to this past session, you voted in favor of 1134, House Bill 1134, the critical race theory bill. Can you, I mean, what issues do you see with the current education system here in Indiana?
Well, I think both sides really have to come together and to listen to each other without pointing fingers, without loud expressions or screaming. I see a lot of, I don't know if you call them protests, I see a lot of voices coming to the State House on both sides. I think education is the key to a good community. A good educated kid will do well in life. You make good and better decisions. There's a lot of state tax dollars that go towards schools. There's a lot of local property tax dollars that go towards schools and infrastructure. And it's the biggest part of our budget. So we got to make sure that we listen to the biggest part of our budget. But we also got to keep in mind that the parent does and should have a choice on their kids.
Another bill that you voted in favor this session was 1041, the Trans Athletes in Sports bill. I had spoken with the IHSAA here. They've approved one transgender waiver in the decade plus that they've had a transgender athletes policy. I guess, why is this such an important issue for the GOP here in Indiana right now?
I don't hear it just as a sounding phrase for GOP. I go through my district. Let's take Ellington, for example. Democrat mayor, Democrat town council. I hear the same things there. Please do not let a male compete with my daughter. It's not fair. They have bigger lungs, longer muscles. I'm just not hearing that from Republicans. We just want to make sure, and I think my citizens just want to make sure that it's not an issue here. It seems simple.
So House Speaker Houston said, he'd vote to override that veto from Governor Holcomb. Would it be safe to assume that you'd vote to override that veto as well?
Oh yes, I've got that on my radio ads. I've got that on print. I think it's an issue that needs to be corrected, and I'll do that.
With the changes to the Supreme Court that we've seen, there has been more discussion about the future of Roe v. Wade. If there was something to happen where we leave it back up to the states to make their kind of decisions on abortion access, would you be in favor of more abortion restrictions here in Indiana?
I think I'll be in favor of making sure that if there's a change at the federal level and it puts that burden, that responsibility on the state, that we've already signed a letter to the governor, if that happens, that we will go back in session. And we will look at that in all aspects.
Okay. My final national question, is Joe Biden the rightfully elected president?
So, here's the issue. You have a lot of states that took what state lawmakers had as laws and circumvented it. I think, yes, in those states, they did not abide by their own laws. Secretary of State's made decisions, the governors made decisions, but it's up to the legislature in each state to make those laws for the elections, the processes, which we do here in Indiana, and we abide by them. So, given that, yes, Trump lost votes because of those political decisions. Trump is my president in heart. Legally, with the process, we have Biden. And believe me, as I walk my district, my constituents, my future constituents, are scared to death. With the leadership we have in Washington, with the way not only America is going, but the world. Open up those pipelines, open up those permits in areas that we can do those permits environmentally sound. And yes, there's an issue.
So I'll throw it over to you with my last one. I kind of asked this earlier. Why should House District 45 voters vote for you? What makes you the right candidate for this upcoming election?
I represent 60% of you already. I've been there since 2016. I go to your fundraisers, I go to your Farm Bureau meetings, I go to your 4-H fairgrounds. I make investments with my time and what little dollar I have for your efforts. This is not an on-election or off-election thing I do. I do it every day, every week. I answer my phone 7 days a week. I'm very responsive. I'm very effective as a legislator. Look at the community crossing grants that's going through your communities. Look at the blacktop that's going down right now. There's more on the way. My opponent didn't vote for any of that. He thought our roads were fine. I don't. That makes a good base for all of our district. And it's a new District 45. That number doesn't belong to any one legislator. It belongs to the people of Indiana in this district. And I thank you for your vote.
And I thank you for your time, Jeff. I appreciate it.